Welcome to Still In It, a 5-MeO DMT Journeys podcast, where I talk to real people about their 5-MeO experience. Our goal is to bring you honest and diverse perspectives about what this medicine is all about. I'm your host, Jessie, and I'm excited to have you along for the ride. So hop in and enjoy as we discuss what preparation, ceremony, and integration look like. This podcast is sponsored by Enfold, offering safe and sacred experiences in British Columbia. To learn more, visit enfold.org. That is enfold.org. Or click the link in the show notes. And now, without further ado, I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello and welcome. We have a wonderful guest on today. Her name is MJ.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us. What drew you to the medicine? What made you want to do 5-MeO DMT?
Yeah. Well, I think I had always been drawn to the idea of psychedelics. I have many friends that have done ayahuasca in the past. But I wasn't sure about ayahuasca itself or the idea of going in the jungle and just that kind of setting. I think it's a year ago, where I have a friend that told me about Steve, um, and in that retreat, you know what you do in a retreat? You pull out some tarot cards and you kind of like think about your future. And I pulled a card that was the bear, and the bear is about awakening. It's about coming out of hibernation. And this friend that was, you know, hosting this conversation around the cards is actually a friend of Steve, and said, "Oh my God, you should totally go to Enfold." And like I said, I had always been curious, and it's only when I think I had a conversation with Steve on Zoom, who really introduced not just the medicine as far as you can introduce it, because it's hard to connect what 5-MeO is, but also introducing, I think, the container was really, really helpful. The fact that it was a small group, that it wasn't in a jungle because I don't like heat that much, that it was near Vancouver, and that it was, small groups, 2 facilitators, just that whole container. It just felt, I just knew, basically. And I booked it that same day. It was an introduction call and information call, but like I booked it right away after that.
Yeah, beautiful. Love that you brought up awakening, because 5-MeO DMT is often coined as an awakening that happens afterwards.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think a lot of the intensity or the experience of a psychedelic has a lot to do with the setting and the facilitators and how you feel the trust that you have there to let go. But beyond that, it really is just a vibe thing. So I always try to encourage people who are interested in retreats, like hop on a call with somebody just to like, as soon as you start to like talk, you kind of get an essence for like what you may or may not be able to expect from it.
Yeah.
Of course, it's just a sliver.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because yes, it was about the people for me, also feeling safe. So the vibe was there with Steve for sure. And then with Austin, I hadn't met her. Like I only had seen videos of her online. And I have to admit, like at first I was like, I wasn't sure if that was going to be like the vibe that I was looking for, but it turned out to be the best part, and the connection I had with Austin, especially during the ceremony and the space that she held for me, and what that represented for me during the ceremony was such a gift. I may cry now because every time I like refer to this, it's like it comes back. It felt like I was in the presence of pure love for the first time in my life. So yeah, that's I'm gonna get emotional. But yeah, it was a great, great presence that whenever I do breath work or meditation now, and I like go back to that place, that pure love that I felt at that moment with her. So
That's beautiful.
yeah.
That's so beautiful. I don't want to get hippie, but like I feel like a lot of what the world is, it's like we're looking for love and a purity of it. And like if it's just like without conditions, you realize like, wow, that is now the new standard of what I want to expect from my connections with anybody, platonic, relational, romantic. It's like if we can all work to try to be able to be that open and loving and caring towards each other, like what a beautiful like world we would be living
Yeah.
in, and even just our own separate world. So it's like, you know,
Yes, and also for me, what it allowed is that it kind of like left a print here. Like I now I know what unconditional love feels like. And so it's like a print that it left, that when I want to feel it and like hard moments or whatever, it's like it's within me. It's not just within others. So that's really, really special.
so how was your ceremony? I know we alluded a little bit about the container that Stephen Austin is creating and holding, but like how was five for you, the actual like drug experience?
It was the journey of a lifetime, and it's really hard to find the words. But for me, the experience was extremely in the body. I didn't see any hallucinations or anything like that. But the way that I conceptualized where I was is I was in the white light. I saw this just beautiful, the most purest white light. So I don't know if that's what people say that they see when they cross over, but to me, it felt that what it was. And the first dose that I had, really something happened in my lower stomach. There was this like triangle shape towards my pubic bone, to be precise. There was this like just this very, very clear zone that was just lit up and alive, and it felt beautiful. The first dose, I remember a bit more because it was a lower dose, so maybe that's why I can say as much as I can. What I also, the big part of the ceremony is also coming back from the dose. And I remember coming back from that dose just crying my eyes out and just releasing so much. But it was like, it was a tough cry, but it was a good cry. And it was, that feeling that you have when you like want to laugh and cry at the same time. And I remember the first thing I was able to say when I was slowly coming back is I remember looking up at Austin and saying, I have to pee. And so she's like, okay, let's go pee. So I went to the washroom, bawling, bawling, laughing, peeing. And I remember what came to me, which was super clear, is that my mother actually passed away now almost 10 years ago now. She passed away from bladder cancer. And I remember just knowing that what I had released was somehow her stuff. It's probably what her stuff passed down to me, but that's what I felt. And the second and third dose for me, I feel were pretty similar in a sense of like white light, coming back, crying my eyes out, laughing, just releasing a whole lot of stuff. And you don't really know what you're releasing, but you know that it's good that you're releasing it. But the thing is that the higher you go in the dosing, the less aware you are of what's going on during the dose. So when I was coming back, now what I now understand is that my ego at that point was telling me, you didn't get there. Probably something like, you'll never get there. You're not, strong enough, or you don't deserve it, or whatnot. So when I would come back, I would feel like I didn't get there. I didn't get there. But what was interesting in hindsight is that we had this one-on-one conversation afterwards. What they observed is me getting there. Like my eyes were wide open and my mouth was wide open, and I was like I seemed like I was in ecstasy, or just totally in awe of what was happening. But this is what I understood later on through integration, is that For me, my ego came back with a vengeance, and I think the ego wants to protect you, right? And it wants to make sure that you're staying safe. After ceremony day, in my head, my ego was telling me I didn't get there. So that was like really, really difficult. And I'll always remember sitting down right before supper where I was like all up in my head trying to figure out what the hell, this meant and what had just happened. And Steve came and sat next to me and said, "There's no way you can understand what just happened, like right now. Like, give it space, give it time." And boy, was he right. Was he right? So I was like really thankful for that sentence that he gave me at the end of the day, because it just helped me to kind of like step back and not try to understand too much. And I later understood.
First of all, like with Steve, he always has the right things to say. I think that's his gift, is he can articulate very beautifully exactly like what you need to hear or how
Hmm.
you're feeling. But as you said, words are never enough. It's an ineffable experience. So a part of it is also like you will never fully even understand what even happened in that.
Yeah.
But it is a very somatic. I remember it being very somatic for myself too. You mentioned the word crossing over, which I think was a beautiful way to explain where you're in your body form and then you're in like just energy. You don't even know you're nothing. Like you just think it's everything. I don't know how to explain it. It's
Yeah.
nothing and everything all at once and you have no
Yeah.
questions. It just is. Yeah. And you mentioned you just felt like you didn't get there and the limiting talk there. And I wonder if that's like a lot where the work is for you. You seem to be like hyper focused on like you didn't feel like you got there. And it's like, what is that? How does that translate into your life, you know?
I think for me, in hindsight, it has to do with feelings of like it's not for me. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this. I think it's like something that I had in my mind and my ego since very, very young. So yeah, your ego is gonna show up in a major way, which was for me the fact that the ego showed up and tried to make me believe these kinds of things was one of the biggest revelations in itself, because I was able to really see who I am. And that was a big, big part of my experience there, is to recognize that I am not my ego. I am not those beliefs. That's not who I am. There's like another part of me that's like the conscience or whatever you want to call it, that is able to look at this and detach from this and play with it or be aware of it. And it doesn't mean that the ego is no longer there, it's still there. But now that I've been able to kind of like separate the two, I'm able to not just get fully immersed in that concept of what reality is, right? I'm able to look at it from a distance without judgment, but with love, you know? And so that's a big, big gift that five was able to give me.
It is. It is. And you'll always have an ego, and ego is like what you need in order to, it's an
Yeah.
identity. It's, you need to be able to have it to like go through life.
Yeah.
um, but you did mention in the word inadequacy, and then before that, earlier you mentioned pure love, and I wonder if like those are like correlated. If like the inadequacy is from not feeling that pure love, and
Yeah.
now since you felt it, do you feel like you have made like accolades or big changes with maybe those self-limiting beliefs or the inadequacy side of you that you feel?
Yeah. I think that the two are, for me, were completely linked. I don't want to say pure love, I want to say unconditional love. I don't think I ever knew what that was, in my past, in my youth, and what I was able to feel through this experience is that it exists and it is for me. And it exists for everybody, and I am not inadequate and I am worthy. I've been able to kind of like detach the concept of love from the forms in which we usually experience it. Like you experience love in relationships and in romantic love. But really, since then, there's been periods like in my work, for example, I have felt love being present. And so that's something that is shifting also, is to not stop expecting love, only in relationship or romantic love. Like love is everywhere within me, with in the space that we're in, and everything that I do. Um, so that's huge. It's pretty huge. I'm not sure I completely understand it yet, but it's kind of like a knowing that like has shifted,
Yeah,
you know?
it's huge. I mean, you're basically shifting a paradigm that you grew up with, that love is only through these metrics or whatever, and realizing you now opened and released and seeing that like love is present through all, and you are pure love. You have felt that it's an energy, and you can tap into it whenever you want to, right? So that's
Yeah.
what it sounds like.
Well, that's the print that I was talking about earlier. You know, the print that it left on my heart. I feel it sounds. I hear myself talk sometimes like the old me would so think that this sounds completely cheesy, but still, it's that's what it is. You know, the print that it left on me, this ceremony and that meeting with the medicine, is like something that I can go and tap back into when I want to feel pure love. I have that I can go back to. I don't go back to like the white light, unfortunately, but there's still something that's there that I can totally get back to.
Beautiful. Is
Mm.
that kind of what your integration was all about? Was it challenging for you? Was it quite easy? Like different, everyone has a different experience going out of retreats. I'm just curious how that felt
I
for you.
mean, it was challenging. It was challenging, but like I think that one thing that has always defined who I am, or like how I do things, is I'm not afraid. I've never been afraid of work and hard work. Um, and so like the day after the ceremony, the integration day, was like a trip in itself. Like I obviously released a lot of stuff during the ceremony and in between doses. But in the next day, in the integration day, there is a hot and cold ceremony where Austin guides us through three meditations in a sauna, and afterwards we go and do a cold plunge. And I remember after, I think I stayed like 4 minutes in the cold bath, that I remember coming out of the bathtub and laying on the deck, and my body just started doing things that I could not control. Like my chest was like rising up, and my chin was going up towards the sky, and my mouth was open, and I was just like stuck, quote unquote, in this position. It's like my body was trying to do something, and my head was present, but was like completely conscious of the fact that I had no control whatsoever about what my body was doing. So, you know, Steve later called it like reactivations. I had a lot of reactivations. And this whole thing that I was, you know, waiting to happen during the ceremony happened the day after, in the hot cold ceremony, and during the breathwork exercises as well. And I think for a solid, I want to say, 10 days after the ceremony, I would have reactivations every single night. Like that movement, you know, I would wake up in the middle of the night and I knew it was coming, and it was like, okay, body, like, go ahead, do what you need to do. And it was kind of like bringing me back somewhat in, you know, in the experience of this ceremony, but it was, so I just like let it happen. I mean, but that can be challenging, you know what I mean, when you, if you're not prepared for it. And I was lucky enough also, which I think is like really really important, is like the space after the retreat. I had a lot of time. I didn't just go back to work. I had a lot of time to just take my time and experience the reactivations, and thank God for it. Like I'm really really happy I had that space and that time afterwards. It was really useful.
Amazing. Yeah. I'm glad you touched on that. I think with the drug itself, you mentioned again, like words are never enough. It's like it's your body that's feeling it. And it's kind of hard to be able to put language to it. And I think your body has its own language and its own intelligence, right? So what it
Yeah.
sounds like is like your reactivations. It's like your body's in. like your body's allowing itself to open up, because that's what the movement is, right? For those who are not on watching this on video, it's quite just like your heart is expanding. And
Yes,
especially in like yoga and it's that is a heart opening pose. It's an opening, and it's a
totally.
very vulnerable pose to be in. And
Yep.
especially just even body language for humans, so you're just, it was like your body was just like, I need a release, I need to open up.
Yeah.
And you saying that you just allowed it to happen, it's kind of the essence of life. It's like you just got to surrender, allow things to move through you. And I had come from a chemistry degree, and when it was happening to me going through integration, I was like, this is not the medicine, it's already been metabolized, like there's no way. And I was like
Yeah.
resisting that, but it's like there's no other way to explain all the crazy things that gotta
I know.
happen.
I know. Yeah, it's like I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's like either my spirit or my body was like still needing to. It was a total opening up,
Hmm.
phase during integration. I mean, it wasn't easy because you're like, what the hell is going on with me? And how long is this going to last, But for whatever reason, I had faith and I had like a deep knowing that this is what just was meant to happen. I just allowed it to happen for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I
Mm,
think it's like something that we all have to also like get on board with is we don't have all the answers as humans to the mysteries of life, and sometimes it's just
no.
allowing and flexing that muscle and growing that muscle of being okay with discomfort and the uncertainty. And I think that's part of integration too, is like you become more chill because of all the things that just kind of come up, and you just kind of have to be like, this isn't easy, but I just have to allow. And that exercising that does so much wonders for your life going forward.
Well, I think that's a huge part of what you just said. This whole experience is like capacity to tolerate the discomfort. When discomfort arises, there's a message in there, and trying to avoid it or fight it is just not useful. There was a sentence that I heard a couple years ago is whatever you resist persists. And I think that's totally true here. It's like it's hard to say don't be afraid for anybody listening to this and going into 5-meo. Of course I felt fear, and I'm going back for it, by the way. I'm going back for a second retreat, and there's still a piece of fear, but lean into the fear, I would say, is really really useful. Yeah, makes a big difference, and I think the overall experience that you get.
It's so normal to feel fear. Like there's
Yeah.
like part of you that's excited, but a lot of you that's fearful, and that's normal. Would that be your one tip for somebody? Like I do like to usually ask that in the podcast. Like what is one thing that you'd want somebody to know before they embark on 5-MeO or to go to Enfold?
I think trust is a good word for me. Trust that whatever is going to happen is meant to happen. And so that goes, it's kind of like it goes hand in hand with fear. You can be afraid, but you can also trust. And I don't think it's either or, take it all, take it all in at the same time. But don't go into it thinking you won't be afraid. You will be afraid. Like, again, trust at the same time. They're not exclusive.
Trust is like, it sounds like such a beautiful word, and it's like just like anything like healing, resetting, it sounds so positive, and it is, but it's not without challenge or without negative emotions or whatnot. So
Yeah.
100% trust is a
Yeah.
beautiful word to be using, and just trust that this is all going to be what exactly you need, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's good to go in and to go into it with somewhat of an intention, but be open to surprises. I remember after the ceremony walking out on the deck with Austin, and I remember saying, I feel like a lot of stuff that I let go of didn't even belong to me. It belonged to, I don't know, ancestry, I don't know, something, but it felt like a lot of it came from a place that I was completely unaware of, unconscious of, and partly didn't completely belong to me, like I said.
100%. You're not the first nor the last person to say that. I felt that exactly. I was like, whoa, this is not mine. Like, I remember feeling that in my ceremony. I'm like, this is so not mine. I've been
Yeah.
carrying it with me forever. You have to then go through the process of grieving all those things that you didn't even realize, like, even though it hurt, like, holding it was still you. And it's just like, oh,
Mhm.
it's a tricky thing.
Yeah, what I remember feeling is now that I've let go of a lot of stuff, there's kind of like an in between moment, kind of like a transition kind of space of how am I going forward? Like what do I want now? Or what does this mean now? What does the space that was, that was empty before, what do I fill it with afterwards? There's this piece of integration that's not always comfortable also, that's kind of like, it's a lot of open-ended questions. I call it like I felt suspended, like not rooted in something that's clear or that's that I've known all, so there's a lot of things that are still up in the air, and that part of it also can be not super comfortable all the time. It's a lot of, like I
No.
said, open-ended question that are not like simple to answer, you know?
Totally. Did it feel like you eventually landed that plane and anchored in, or are you still feeling like you're in the
Floating.
air? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Did that ever come though? Like, did you ever feel like you finally landed?
Like I landed in some areas, and I feel that there are other areas that are still a bit in suspension. But the discomfort around the suspension is not, I'm not feeling uncomfortable about it. I'm feeling, again, the word trust comes to mind. It's
Okay,
like,
yeah.
there's something open and it's there for a reason, and I have faith that it's going to, place itself or figure I'm gonna figure it out. But it's not uncomfortable, or I'm not fearful about it.
Okay,
If
yeah.
that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
100%. Okay. I think that is like life though, right? It's like you just kind of have to
Yeah.
like, you'll never really, you can plan, you can make goals, and but you have to be comfortable knowing that like a lot of things are just kind of left in limbo, and getting used to
Totally.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, MJ, thank you. I can't wait. We'll definitely have to do another podcast after your second ceremony and see how that was.
I'd love to. And I think it's going to be, yeah, for now, I'm going back in August. And as you had as graciously told me, watch your expectations. And so that's a big question mark for me now. It's because now I have reference, right? I have like
Mhm.
something happen. So going in with curiosity and not so much expectations. So we'll see what happens. And I'd love to talk to you again about it when I come
Oh,
back.
we will. We will for sure talk about
Okay,
it.
cool.
Yes. Well, thank you, MJ.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate this conversation. I love your energy, and I think it'll be very helpful for people to hear. Thanks for listening to the Still In It podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're interested in hearing more, the best thing you could do is to leave us a review. This allows us to continue to record and inform others on the 5MEO experience. If you want to join our beloved community or learn more about us, feel free to visit us at enfold.org. That is enfold.org.